Hello, and welcome to Roadside, Florida, the program that takes you back in time to those Florida roadside attractions loved by tourists and locals alike. I'm Rene Ramos, director of the Lynn and Louis Wolfson II Florida Moving Image Archives. Once again, my co-pilot is Historian Sylvia Gurinsky. We begin our journey in Palm Beach County. When you arrived at this destination, you had to keep your car windows rolled up and stay inside. The first of its kind in Florida, Africa U.S.A. was the only place wilder than Fort Lauderdale during spring break, if you can believe that. Now, let's take a look.
Before there was Lion Country Safari, there was Africa U.S.A. Advertised as the first cageless zoo in the United States, Africa U.S.A. opened on 300 acres in Boca Raton in 1953. Visitors mounted the Jeep Safari train to view elephants, giraffes, and more. People could interact with the animals. Africa U.S.A. even had royalty of sorts. Princess Margaret, a chimpanzee that appeared on The Tonight Show, and an exhibit of the world's largest synthetic diamond. Pinup queen Betty Page worked at the park as Jungle Betty. In 1960, the park appeared on the cover of Life magazine. But Boca Raton's growth brought an end to the fun. Owner John Peterson closed the park in 1961, and most of it was added to the city's many residential developments.
To tell us more about Africa USA, here's Sylvia Gurinsky. Welcome back, Sylvia.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Africa USA, this was, it's very commonplace now for there be the type of park where the visitors are caged and the animals are free. But this was really the first of its kind. So tell me a little bit about that. What was the genesis of that? Because this is really a pioneer, if you will.
Well, yeah, and it was the first of its kind really in the United States. And the catalyst was probably different kinds of entertainment coming into vogue after World War II. A lot of the comparison, people have mentioned what's now Zoo Miami, but certainly the biggest comparison probably is for a park that opened a few years after Africa USA closed, and that was Lion Country Safari. There were some differences, though. Lion Country Safari, of course, you have to get in the car, roll up the windows as you go through. But in Africa USA, they had jeeps where people could actually get up close to the animals. Of course, they didn't have animals such as lions and tigers that you could not get close to, but they had more accessible animals such as elephants that you could stop and pet.
So that's really probably the main difference between the newer parks and places than the ones now.
Right.
Well, now for the next stop on our virtual road trip. We drive north to a spooky city upon the hill. Imagine a place where the laws of physics seem to have gone on vacation. You'll have a hard time figuring out what's up and what's not on Spook Hill in Lake Wales.
Beware of Spook Hill? Spook Hill in Lake Wales has puzzled and tantalized many people. Legend has it that an Indian and alligator battled each other on the land, and that their conflict has caused unusual phenomena. Horse riders have reported that their animals have had trouble going downhill. As for motorists, is it possible for a car to roll uphill? Many drivers report just that when they set their gears in neutral. The story of Spook Hill has been immortalized in many ways, including the name of the nearby school, which has Casper the Friendly Ghost as its mascot. Scientists and geologists have said Spook Hill is an optical illusion. Maybe so. Whatever it is, the legend continues.
Oh, fascinating place. Sylvia, this seems like a case for the Ghostbusters, or at least the ghost folks on the Travel Channel to do a special episode about.
Well, a lot of people have actually done all sorts of analysis as to why Spook Hill is the way it is. And I have to confess, the one time I have been there, I have not felt the phenomenon myself.
Okay, so is it essentially that you would park the car, and if you put it in neutral, what would happen?
Theoretically, you're supposed to roll uphill.
Okay.
The reason for the argument about the optical illusion is the way the hill is aligned. But of course, fiction or maybe fancy is much better than scientific detail in this case, because people want to feel the optical illusion.
So the typical family that wanted to actually see this, what would be how would they find out about it? What would be the point in the itinerary where they would decide that they're going to go over to Spook Hill?
Lake Wales has done a great deal to advertise this through the years, and they've even had some pranksters have come because Lake Wales has put up signs saying Spook Hill is this way, and pranksters have moved the signs in the opposite direction. So before you get to Spook Hill, it's the spook of getting to Spook Hill in the first place.
So are there developments or the communities that have come up around it, or what's the situation there?
Lake Wales still has, because it has Bok Tower Gardens, Lake Wales is going to attract a lot of people anyway. But Spook Hill is still a curiosity, and there's another Spook Hill, I think, up in upstate New York as well.
So Sylvia, I'm thinking, somebody, if they found out about a few more of these spots in Florida, they might be able to cobble together a little ghost tour.
Magical mystery tour.
What do you think of that? Has anybody thought of that, or have they done that at this point?
I think a few people have done their own variations on spooky tours or mystery tours in Florida. It's still a project in its infancy, I think, but Spook Hill would certainly be one of the highlights.
Well, it's giving me an idea for maybe a future Roadside Florida show. Well, we're taking our first break, but when we come back, we'll stay a little bit longer at Lake Wales and sit down to a sumptuous meal at Fancy
Yum.
Chalet. You shall not let your finger touch that dial. And now, a television commercial blast from the past.
Voisin, to the knowing New Yorker, one of the world's finest restaurants. Duck à l'orange, one of the entrees prepared by Voisin and served on Eastern's famous restaurant flights from New York. Masson's, New Orleans. Gourmets recommend their crêpe de mer, one of the delicacies featured by this restaurant and served on Eastern's famous restaurant flights from New Orleans. Chicago's Pump Room. Ballotine of Capon, one of the specialties prepared by this unique restaurant and served on Eastern's famous restaurant flights from Chicago. For a great gourmet dinner with a view, fly Eastern. See how much better an airline can be.
Start your story at MDC. Be analytical. Be imaginative. Be a rising star. Be bold. Be connected. Be the solution. Be ready. What's your story? Be the best. Be you. Be MDC.
Welcome back, and bonjour, mes amis. On our travels, we can get a little tired of the usual roadside chow. Luckily, our next stop provides a touch of old world elegance and class. Not to mention some fine dining in a beautiful setting. In Lake Wales, Chalet Sizanne's food was literally out of this world. Just wait till you hear how. Roll that video.
Chalet Sizanne was a slice of heaven in Central Florida. Named for the daughter of creator Bertha Hinshaw, Chalet Sizanne was originally intended as a golf club. Instead, the Hinshaw family turned it into a classic inn and restaurant. The fairy tale accommodations in Lake Wales, including a private landing airstrip, attracted movie stars and other notables. Chalet Sizanne's meals, which included broiled grapefruit and lobster Newburg, were celebrated by food critics. Its romaine soup, taken on 2 Apollo missions, was sold as moon soup. In 2014, hearts were broken when the Hinshaw family closed Chalet Sizanne. The dishes and other artifacts were auctioned off, but the land and buildings are still available. Anyone want to open an inn and restaurant?
So welcome back, Sylvia.
Thank you.
So this Chalet Sizanne, it just seems like a odd little bit of luxury on the usual roadside itinerary of Waffle Houses and that kind of fare.
Mm-hmm.
So you actually had the pleasure of going to Chalet Sizanne. Tell me a
indeed.
little bit about what the experience was like.
Yeah, that was in 2001 when the Jewish Museum of Florida did a trek around the state, and it's one of the great meals I've ever eaten in my life. And I'd never been here, even though I'd been to Boca Gardens nearby in Lake Wales a couple of times, but I had never been to Chalet Sizanne. And it really is one of the places from another world. It really was, including the accommodations and also the restaurant.
What was on the menu that time that you went, and what did you have?
I had the broiled grapefruit.
Okay.
We also had
It's a nice Florida touch.
Absolutely. And some sort of a chicken dish with a puff pastry. And we had the moon soup.
Okay.
The immortalized romaine soup.
Okay, yeah, tell me a little bit more about that. So this is a really interesting angle. The soup actually made it out to the astronauts and went into space, so literally out of this world. So
Absolutely.
What was it like? What was it in? And what was the genesis of that whole episode with the astronauts?
Well, the crews of Apollo 15 and 16 were training, of course, nearby in Cape Canaveral, and they had a chance to go to Chalet Sizanne for a meal, and they wound up taking some of the soup on their missions with them. So it became known as Moon Soup. Chalet Sizanne would forever sell it and market it as Moon Soup, not only at the restaurant, but also at various places around the country, various markets where they sold the soup and their products.
I'm going to think those astronauts probably enjoyed that quite a bit more than the mashed potatoes and the peas out of a little tube that they were typically getting.
Well, I think this also came out of a tube because of zero gravity, but it was much more enjoyable for them than, as you mentioned in the past, Tang.
Right, exactly. Well, now for a spectacular park that combined meticulously cared for gardens with acrobatic water skiing and strolling southern belles. Cypress Gardens was a colorful old Florida attraction that today has been transformed into colorful plastic block playland. Let's go and check it out.
Before there was Walt Disney World, there was Cypress Gardens. During the Great Depression, advertising executive Dick Pope and his family decided to try to make a living with gardens among the cypress trees of Central Florida. The Winter Haven venture became more successful than they could have dreamed, with Southern Belles and daily water ski shows among the attractions. Stars of film and television came to Cypress Gardens to work as well as sightsee. They contributed to the park's reputation as Florida's #1 tourist attraction. After Disney World opened in 1971, the luster faded as Cypress Gardens passed from one owner to another and closed for a while. But recently, the state of Florida and LEGO came to the rescue. Today, historic Cypress Gardens is part of Legoland, Florida.
So, Sylvia, Cypress Gardens, this was really one of the classic old school Florida roadside attractions, and I think anybody that grew up here kind of knew about it. But how well known was it in the rest of the country?
Well, it was certainly well enough to be, in the pre-Disney days, for the most part, Florida's #1 tourist attraction. And it was heavily marketed, particularly in the northern United States, and people headed south to see it. The MGM movie, the 1953 MGM movie Easy to Love, which starred Esther Williams, who both swam in the Florida pool and water skied at the film's climax, also promoted Cypress Gardens for so many people.
So you actually went to Cypress Gardens?
Yeah, numerous times.
Okay, did you go there as a child?
I went there as a child, had a chance to see the water skiing show. I posed for a picture with the Southern Belle. Got to pose for pictures next to the Florida pool. And I had for a while one of the Southern Belle wax figures that was made in the molding machines until, alas, it broke. But we still have the memories. Have a picture being one-armed on a glider, basically. And my dad took a similar picture as well. And really just wonderful places to go around. My prom dress had kind of a Cypress Gardens look to it. It was Southern Belle.
Southern Belle kind of deal?
Yeah.
You know, it makes you think maybe this isn't quite the same kind of an attraction that would hold young people's attention now, because the kids are really into the high impact Disney and Universal Studios types of attractions. But Cypress Gardens is no more, sadly. But there is now Legoland, which is a really interesting and fascinating kind of place in itself. And there's a Miami-Dade College connection to it. There's an actual miniature version of Florida. And if you go down to the Miami part of it, you get a little mini version of South Beach. But then if you go to the little Havana section, you actually see Miami-Dade College's Tower Theater in miniature. So we made it to the big time. We're in the amusement park world. Absolutely. I think that's fascinating, and with the incredible presence of Lego all over the world, the fact that Cypress Gardens, it's sad that old Florida, old school Florida is gone, but it's interesting to have that kind of a new connection with kids and their technology now. So it's time to take another break, but after this short intermission, we'll keep driving north until we hit the wall. A wall? Yes, the Great Wall of Orlando. But this wall was built for people to visit, not to keep them out. Stay tuned to find out more. And now, another television commercial blast from the past.
So you're going on your vacation. You want to take the family someplace new to swim. How about this beach? Or this terrific lake? Then again, if golf's your game, whoops. Well, how about sightseeing? Or maybe fishing's your favorite? How about going to where the action is? That's right. On your vacation, you can do more right here in Florida. Yes, discover America, but see Florida first.
Start your story at MDC. Be analytical. Be imaginative. Be a rising star. Be bold. Be connected. Be the solution. Be ready. What's your story? Be the best. Be you. Be MDC.
Did you enjoy the previous archived television commercial? Well, here's another one.
If you could take all of the beauty of China, add the excitement of China, with acrobats, dancers, authentic Chinese dining, and a whole new world of shopping, recreate all of this amazing country and place it right here in Central Florida, then you could visit China today. Splendid China.
Welcome back. In the 1990s, there was a fascinating park in Orlando dedicated to replicating famous landmarks in the People's Republic of China. The park is no more, but the memories are splendid of what was Splendid China.
For a while, it was possible to see the Great Wall of China, or a miniature copy of it, in Central Florida. Miniatures of the Great Wall, Tiananmen Square, and other Chinese landmarks were part of Splendid China, which opened in Orlando in 1993. Visitors could also stroll through a village that featured performances by Chinese artists, acrobats, and musicians, as well as gift shops and a restaurant. But politics played a major role in the lack of success by Splendid China. The theme park was run by the Chinese government. Frequently, there were protesters outside the park, accusing China of human rights violations and criticizing the United States for allowing Splendid China to open. Logistics were also an issue. Splendid China had little shade for people walking through the large park in the summertime heat. It closed at the end of 2003.
The park had its controversies, and I guess because of just the nature of relationships with China, you know, there was some controversy about it. But despite that, people were really fascinated and wanted to go and visit it. So it had quite a following, this park, for a while.
It was a curiosity. I had a chance to go with my family, and others did too. And really, in fairness to the people who worked very hard within the park to help entertain people. So for that, it was, their efforts were very much appreciated, I think, by people who got a chance to go there.
So how long did the park go on? How long was it in
existence?
existence?
It was open for a decade,
okay.
93 to 2003.
Okay.
And there were, particularly in the early days, there were issues with protesters outside the park.
Right. I'm thinking with the relatively recent occurrence of the Tiananmen Square and all of that. But, you know, despite that, there were some really fascinating things to see. So there was an actual replica of the Great Wall that you could see.
Actual replica of the Great Wall and other places where people travel thousands and thousands of miles in China to see, brought down to miniature, brought down to touchable kinds of things.
For you having been there personally, what was the experience like mentally to actually be interacting with these small-scale versions of things in China?
Well, I've never been to China, so it's a good introduction.
Okay.
It was a good introduction, I think, for me, or for people who are curious about China but are not yet in a position to be able to go for one reason or another.
And this is kind of the same rationale with Epcot and how people experiment that, or is it different?
Well, Splendid China went into more detail about the landmarks in China than Epcot China Pavilion does, although the 360 movie in Epcot's China Pavilion highlights some of the things that were displayed in miniature at Splendid China.
Interesting. Now for another Orlando attraction. Short of hopping on a plane and heading to Hollywood, California, the best way to see stars of the stage and screen was a trip to the Stars Hall of Fame. Let the spotlight shine on the stars, but don't let it get too hot or they might just melt. So let's stop the world and not melt with them. Like they say in Hollywood, action.
Hooray for Orlando! Not intimidated by the success of Walt Disney World, Six Flags opened the Stars Hall of Fame and Wax Museum in 1975. Visitors saw wax recreations of their favorite movie and television scenes, including Fred Astaire dancing with Ginger Rogers and Dorothy and her friends heading along the yellow brick road to the Land of Oz. During the attraction's later years, it was possible for fans to take a screen test, with some winning appearances on TV shows. The museum also welcomed real-life stars such as Danny Thomas. Ultimately, the opening of Epcot and plans for Disney MGM and Universal Studios took away the glory. The Stars Hall of Fame and Wax Museum faded off into the sunset in 1985.
Wow, Sylvia, more than usual, I feel like you waxed eloquent on that last introduction. Sorry. So tell me about this Stars Hall of Fame. You know, it seems like maybe the experience was a little like going to Hollywood Boulevard with the, you know, some of the experience there, except that they were wax figures, not people impersonating the stars.
Yeah, that I'd never been, at that point, I'd never been to California either, so it was a good chance to see those scenes out of classic movies, mostly classic movies. There were a few from television shows as well. And in the later years of Stars Hall of Fame, they actually let people try out for a part in a movie or a TV show.
Wow, so they actually, did they actually shoot things there or film things there? Or
they did not.
Okay.
They did not. But I never did get my close-up for Mr. DeMille or anybody else.
Right. Yeah, it seems to be connected in a sense with Orlando, and I guess what came later on with Universal, the whole concept of Orlando kind of replicating the Hollywood feel and the whole movie land type of experience.
Yeah, in a way, it was a good lead-in to Universal, but also, and particularly Disney MGM, because Disney MGM, they've been changing things around there, but what's now Disney Hollywood or has gone on to become something else yet again. But they had for many years the Great Movie Ride, and the Great Movie Ride, when I went the first time to Disney MGM, it reminded me of some of the wax figures that there had been at the Stars Hall of Fame.
Yeah. It just seems, though, with what's actually there now, you know, these incredibly huge scale attractions, a small museum like the Hall of Fame, it seems like it just gets dwarfed or would have gotten dwarfed.
Yeah.
So that's ultimately what happened to the museum, I would think,
and
right?
there are a lot, if you're an attraction in the Orlando area, Kissimmee, St. Cloud, etc., it's a struggle sometimes to compete with the double of Disney World and Universal.
Well, we love those old attractions here, and we're going to continue visiting them as long as we can, and there's gas in the car. So that's all for this edition of Roadside Florida. Roadside Florida features historical film and videos from the Lynn and Lewis Wolfson II Florida Moving Image Archives. To see more from the Wolfson Archives collection, visit our website at wolfsonarchives.org. You can search the archives catalog and watch videos online. And be sure to connect to our YouTube channel, where you will find hundreds of carefully curated clips, or link to the Wolfson Archives Facebook page to keep up with our busy calendar of historical happenings. I'm Rene Ramos. Until next time, thank you for watching.